Thanks so much, Mark. Always a pleasure to be here and to see everyone's faces and connect with this Chevraya Kadisha, with this sacred community of practice. I would like to take some time today to connect the theme of Shemitah, of letting go of the year of release, with our high holiday prep. As we do the work of teshuvah, of return, of returning to our source, returning to our noble intentions to be the people we hope to be in this life, and to minimize suffering and promote well-being for all beings. And so, Barbara, if I can ask you please to share the source sheet on the screen. And I believe that the link has been dropped into the chat for those who would like a copy of it for themselves. So even though it's not up yet, it will be up in just a moment. And the first source we're going to be taking a look at actually is a quotation from the Ila Prayer, right? The prayer that kind of locks in all of our heartfelt prayers and confessions and intentions for the new year toward the very end of Yom Kippur. We spent a whole day really in self-reflection and refraining from indulging the pleasures of the body. And in some ways, according to Rabbi Alan Liu, for example, rehearsing our own death. And then we come to the kind of apex, the climax of the day, the Ila Prayer, and we actually thank the divine source for giving us this day of atonement lovingly, a day of cessation, a day of pardon and forgiveness for all of our harmful ways. The Hebrew here then is lema'an nechdal me'oshek yadenu, that we might desist from the oppression of our hands, the oppression of our hands. I want to invite you to hold on to that phrase because it's going to be really important in our practice. And return to you, that is to the divine wholeheartedly. Let us feel your expansive compassion, for you do not wish for the world's destruction, right? So right here we see that the Ila Prayer itself connects our destructive and oppressive tendencies, which are connected to our actual hands, right? The instruments of our action, of our deeds in this world, and the destruction of the world. It's right there, right? Black and white, in plain English. And there's a real recognition here that when we're disconnected from our divine source, when we're not aware of that connection, that our hands kind of engage in all kinds of oppressive activities that actually are world destroying. And we can see that, right before our very eyes now. I remember I first learned about the greenhouse effect and climate change when I was in college back in the early 90s. And, I thought back then, wow, it's really bad, but, we're going to figure this out. And somehow as a species, we haven't yet figured out how to let go of the oppression or desist from the oppression that's in our hands. And in that way, minimize the level of destruction that is already transpiring and will continue unless we do something drastic. And actually, the antidote to the ways in which we engage in this kind of oppressive and destructive behavior, at least one of them is this year that's upon us, this year of Shemitah, the year of release. So I want to turn to Deuteronomy chapter 15, which is one of a number of biblical texts that address these laws. And of course, the customs and practices of Shemitah, of the year of release, the sabbatical year, involve allowing the land to lie fallow for the entire year and eating only what grows spontaneously from the earth. Also opening our fields to the commons, so all fences come down and my property no longer belongs to me, as it were. during that year. And anyone who wants to can come and eat, whether rich, poor, etc. But one of the laws that attends this year, that is heralded by this year, it pertains to the remission of debts, debt release. And actually, you should know that during this coming year, the Shalom Center, which is run by our friend Rabbi Arthur Wasco, actually has a project around student loan relief, which you can check out. But this is really a cornerstone law of the sabbatical year. And we might be wondering, well, what does that have to do with the release of land, and how are these two things interconnected? What we're going to see in just a moment is that all of the agricultural laws that are meant to both be regenerative, that are meant to be regenerative for the land, are also meant to be socially regenerative, which is to say they're supposed to create the opportunity for people who've lost access to power, to wealth, right, to once again get up on their feet and become enfranchised. And so the Torah teaches us that every seventh year you shall practice letting go. And we already know this from Leviticus chapter 25, right, a couple books back. Anyone who's read the Torah cycle knows about these laws as they pertain to the land. But now the text says, this shall be the nature of the release. Every creditor shall relax her hand from the due that she claims from her fellow. She shall not oppress her fellow or kinsman, for the time of the Lord's release has arrived. The time of the Lord's release has arrived. And if we, again, go back to the Ila Prayer, which talks about letting go of the oppression that's in our hands, right? We find an echo of that here in these laws, where a creditor is asked to actually relax their tight grip on the loan they are owed, right? And actually open their hands and let go, literally let go. And that's really what this year is about, right? It's moving from this, I'm grasping, I'm holding tightly, to letting go. There's actually a custom among some hunters in Africa, South America, and Asia to trap a certain type of monkey in the following way. They actually bore a hole in a stone or in a sand hill, and they put some food inside. And the hole is just large enough for the monkey to put their hand in, but not large enough for the monkey to take its hand out if it's holding something in its hand. So they drop some food inside the hole, and the monkey actually places its hand inside and grabs the food. And even when the hunter approaches the monkey to catch it, the monkey will not let go of the food. All the monkey needs to do to get to release his hand and run away is let go of the food, and they will not let go, right? And this actually tends to be our natural tendency as human beings, right? When the mind is full of grasping, and in this case, it's for money, right? To get our debt back, to get our money back from whoever we lent money to, rather. We will hold life, even if it kills us, right? Even if it entraps us, even if it places us in fetters. And the thing is that the word used here, the Hebrew masheh or yasheh, comes from the Hebrew word noshe, nun shin he, which does mean to oppress, right? When we're clinging that tightly, it can be oppressive to other people as well as to the land. But it also means to forget. It also means to forget, right? And I think the implication in that double meaning is that we're usually not oppressive because we're bad people, right? Our oppressive tendencies are usually not an outgrowth of our being somehow evil, right? Or bent on destruction. They're actually an outgrowth of our mindless forgetfulness, right? Our inability to kind of pay attention closely to what's happening moment by moment and investigate what's really helpful and what's really harmful. And Barbara, if I can ask you to scroll down, there's this beautiful teaching by the Indian Buddhist scholar and practitioner Nagarjuna, one of the most revered Buddhist teachers who lived during the 2nd and 3rd century. And in a letter to one of his friends, he actually described what are called the 8 worldly concerns, the 8 worldly concerns. And basically what these are essentially are the things that everybody's chasing after when they're not mindful, right? Reflexively, habitually, because we all want to be happy. And we imagine that in pursuing these things, and in avoiding their opposites, we will be happy, right? But in actuality, they don't bring us happiness in the long run. They bring us misery. And the more we grasp, right, the things that we're after, and the more we try to chase away and kind of put at bay the things what we want to avoid, the more our system becomes tight and the more our actions become oppressive towards others and to our planet as well. So these things are, number one, that we tend to seek gain and avoid loss, right? We want more money. We don't want to lose money. We want to accumulate more experiences. We don't want to kind of not have experiences, and so on and so forth. The second is that we tend to seek praise and avoid blame. We tend to seek reputation and avoid infamy. And finally, we tend to seek sense pleasure and avoid pain, right? And essentially, if we look at the systems and structures that are destroying our planet right now, right, they're all motivated in some way by the human desire, the human grasping for one of these things that essentially lies outside of us that we imagine will bring us lasting happiness. Right? And, connect, for example, the human desire for sense pleasure with our current means of production and modern day industry and the scale at which we can produce, right, to satisfy people's sense pleasure, right? And you get Amazon fulfillment centers, right? And the unbelievable climate toll and carbon footprint of these systems and structures, right? The same goes for seeking gain and avoiding loss and so on and so forth, causing all kinds of companies, for example, to put bottom line above planet and above people, right? And Shemitah basically says, investigate these things, right? Stop, let go, and investigate what dimensions of grasping have you in their grip, and can you lay them bare, and can you train in letting go of the oppression that's in your hands, but that emerges originally, right, in the human mind as grasping. So that's what we're going to do today in our sit. And I want to invite us to settle in. And Barbara, you can let go of the screen share. And I actually want to invite us to begin by laying our hands in our lap, wherever they may have come to lie naturally is probably the most comfortable place. Right? And if you want, you can close your eyes, but it's perfectly fine to keep them open and downcast so that you're not necessarily looking directly at someone, but at the table or the wall with a soft gaze. And perhaps you may want to take a couple of deep breaths all the way down into your belly to relax the whole body and let go of any tension on the out breath. And then I want to invite you for a moment to tense up your hands tight as if you're holding on to something for dear life, right? Tight grasp, tense hands, tense muscles in the arms. And take a moment as you do that to just notice, how does that impact your heart? How does that impact your mind? And after you do that, just release and allow every single digit, every single muscle in your hands to let go, to relax. It's like we're giving our hands a Shabbat. It's like we're letting our hands know you don't need to hold on so tightly. What you're looking for is already here, inside of you. That's Shemitah. That's what we're practicing this whole year that's coming up. Releasing our grasp, cultivating faith in the superabundance that lies at the core of our being. And following the lead of your hands here, see if you can relax all the muscles in the body and come into a very dignified and simultaneously very relaxed posture. And during Shemitah, we let the cycles of nature unfold just as they are without intervention. We relax with the faith that what is will be enough. So if you'd like to allow your attention to relax into the rising and falling of your breath, and see if you can just allow the breath to be natural. No intervention here. If the breath doesn't feel like a home base, you can always focus externally on sounds, the feeling of contact between your body and its support. And notice what it's like in heart and mind to abide in a state of non-grasping. During this sit, we will not engage in any oppressive behavior. We cultivate non-grasping, non-oppression, non-harm. And if at some point you find your mind grasping for something, whether it's pleasure, praise, reputation, gain, or an avoidance of the opposite of each of those, notice what happens in the body. Do the hands tense up again? Does the body tighten? So let's sit silently for a little bit and just observe. We may never have thought about it this way, but Shabbat, the Sabbath, Shemitah, a year-long Sabbath for the land and for our people, and sitting in meditation are all politically subversive acts. Right now, the wheels of industry are turning all around the world, trying to satisfy a reservoir of unquenchable desire. And we're sitting here, engaged in non-doing, non-harm, non-oppression. Allowing, letting be, releasing our tight grip on the things of this world, and releasing our belief that happiness could ever be provided by something impermanent that comes from outside. Here we are resting in our true nature, this awareness, this transcendent quality of mind that connects us with the limitless source of being and all of its fullness, all of its spiritual wealth, inexhaustible spiritual wealth. So meditation, Shemitah, Shabbat, these are all politically subversive actions. That might pave the way to a new world.
Friends, throughout the month of Elul, we will seal our practice by hearing the sound of the shofar with different people serving in the role of blowing the shofar today. Grateful to our friend Richard Shiner. It's a custom tradition to listen, to hear the sound of the shofar, waking us up. In this case, inviting us to this practice of Shemitah that Sam beautifully described for us and led us in today. Thank you, Richard. And let's all attune ourselves and attune our ears and our hearts to the sound. Thank you, Richard. And friends, we also close by offering an opportunity for those in mourning, observing a yard site, to join in the mourner's Kaddish and to share the name or names of anyone you're holding in your heart today. In the chat box, either now or after a Kaddish, and invite you to rise with me in body or in spirit if you're joining in Kaddish. Yitgadal, Yitkadash, Shemei Rabbah, Yama, Dibra, Kirute, Yamlich Malchute, V'chaye Chon, U'yom Chon, V'chaye Gepal Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala, B'zman Kariv, Yimru, Amen. Shmei Rabbah. Bara, Alam, Ame, Amaya, Itbara, Tabak, Arni, Amami, Nase, Itada, Ritale, Ibrao, Etbishta, Brifu, Elam, Birkata, Aleta, Behamata, Rama, Allah, Ru, Amen. Hey, Shlama, Rabba, Shamaya, Chaim, Aleinu, B'Amo Yisrael, Amen. Ita Shalom, B'Ramam, Ita Shalom, Ubiach Israel, B'Amo Yoshe Tevel, Imru.
Mama, say shalom. Amen.
Friends, thank you so much for joining us today. You're invited to stay on for a few minutes of conversation with Rabbi Sam Feinsmith about the teaching. Here's our lineup for the rest of the week of teachers. Put in the chat box. Tomorrow will be led by Cantor Carrot Spencer Shapiro. On Wednesday by Mira Neshama Nicolescu joining us from Israel. I'll lead on Thursday, and on Friday, Marita Anderson will lead us as sitting into Shabbat. A reminder tomorrow to join us for a Torah study with Rabbi Jonathan Slater at 11:30 a.m. Eastern. All the sessions, by the way, are recorded and available on the IJS YouTube channel for you to join at your convenience if you miss any or if you want to revisit any of the teachings. And I want to thank Barbara Schumann, who is back while Adi Stein is away in Israel to hold our space, as always, with grace and skill. And Barbara has held this community for many, many months when we began at the outset of the pandemic. And Barbara, thank you so much. It's wonderful to share this with you. And if you do have a question for Sam Feinsmith, please put it in the chat box. I'll try to keep an eye on that. Sam, I have two questions. Thank you. I mean, I can't imagine a better leadoff hitter for this endeavor for this month. Perfect entry into the themes of Shemitah. So one thing I just want to underscore that you said that I wrote down, simple but bears repeating. You said, we are not oppressive because we are evil, quote unquote evil. We act oppressively because we are forgetful. And so one question I have for you, Sam, is to go to that question of forgetfulness and to make that a little specific about what is it that we are forgetting? What are we meant to remember? Conversely, what are we meant to remember? The other one, I'm just going to say the question because maybe it'll percolate, but also I don't want to forget it, which is that at the end, when you invited us really appropriately to remember that the wheels of industry are turning even as we sit, and the subversive nature that I was thinking about people for whom who might consider the not doing a luxury. That is, people whose grasping is not for that which is not need and we don't really need, but grasping for the essentials of life. For water, for food, for shelter. And how do we bring that in for people for whom it's not only natural but maybe even essential to exercise the grasping part of ourselves. So I don't want to ignore that question. Okay, why don't we start with what are we meant to remember or not to forget, conversely.
Thanks, Mark. As we witness firsthand, moment by moment, in our meditation practice, it's so easy to forget our intention. Distractions arise, mental patterns and habits pull our mind off course. And I'm willing to hazard that every single person on this call, and I'll speak for myself, wants to be loving, right? Wants to be compassionate, doesn't want to be greedy, doesn't want to engage in world-destroying activity. We all know that, our habits of consumption and materialism and consumerism are really harmful, But we forget that intention, both individually and as a society, as a culture, right? I really want to stress that final piece in a big way. One of the beautiful things about practice for me personally is that over time, I've been able to learn a whole variety of tools to remain ever present of my intention, right? And if ever present sounds a little bit too ambitious, right? Even to remember our intention more often, I think would have a profound impact. That's one of the things, but there's also the famous Maimonidean teaching that comes right out of the Code of Jewish Law written by Maimonides, the Mishneh Torah, in his treatment of the laws of Teshuvah, and especially around our preparation during Elul for the high holidays, where he says, all year long, we go around wandering, lost in what he calls Hevlei Hazman, right? The vanities of temporal existence, right? And Hevel, the word Hevel also means breath, right? Or vapor. In other words, we're spending our lives forgetting that that if we spend our days kind of chasing down things that are impermanent, like vapor, right? That are here today and vanish tomorrow, or here this year and vanish next year, right? And that's really everything in the phenomenal world. Even the most loving relationship you could ever have with someone, at some point it's going to change, and the love may persist, but it's going to let you down in some way, right? It does not offer lasting ultimate happiness. And if we spend our lives chasing those things down, we'll come to the end of our days and we'll have a lot of regrets. And so Maimonides says, Zichru bor achem, remember your source, remember your creator, and return into Shuvah, right? Return to not some being in the sky who rewards and punishes us for our deeds, right? But to the limitless source of pure consciousness and vitality that flows and courses through everything that exists, animating it and sustaining it, and that flows through us as our consciousness, right? As our life force, as our being, animating us from within, right? And remember that that's there, right? And that itself, a recognition of that, because again, it's not something we need to attain. It's something that's already who we are. That's part of us, essentially, deep down. We need to recognize it and remember it. We knew it once, perhaps as small children or babies, or even in the womb, we knew it once. And when we find our way back, we recognize that resting in that source of pure being, right, is a great source of wealth, a great source of contentment and satisfaction, right? That cuts through our greed. And to the second question, around people who, heaven forbid, don't have the means to be able to take, 30, 45 minutes out of their day to meditate and study spiritual teachings and what have you, I really want to make a distinction here between need and greed. Gandhi said there's enough in this world for our need, but not for our greed, right? And the grasping that I'm describing is, the kind of inner impulse that drives us to want to accumulate more and more and more. Go back to Nagarjuna, right? More wealth, more sense pleasure, more fame and power, more praise, right. And it's never satisfied. And actually, I saw this when I was traveling in Asia for 10 months and living there and volunteering here. The people who have much less than we do are very content and very satisfied with what they have, right? Because they're not caught up I'm not talking universally here. Obviously, there's grasping in Asia, right? People crave in Asia. There's a reason that Asian society is adopting American capitalism, in many ways, and that's kind of beginning to kind of bowl over native sensibilities and traditional sensibilities, but sadly, unfortunately, but we can ask this question ourselves every time we're in the checkout line at the supermarket or making our shopping list, when we're deciding, if we're going to buy another car, or move to a bigger house or whatever the case may be, right? We can ask, am I feeding my greed or am I feeding my need? I was listening to NPR a number of years ago, and I heard that there was a study done about the correlation between material wealth, right, in terms of your actual annual earnings and happiness. And it turns out that up until the threshold of about $80,000, the more money you make, the more happiness you have, right? Beyond that, it actually starts to go down, right? The more money you make, the less happy you are, right? And the reason is, right, and I don't know if $80,000 is enough, for every person on this call, right? Lord knows many of us have kids in college or kids in school and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the point is, that once you cross the need threshold into greed, right, the more you feed that greed, the more discontent you're going to have in your life. And what Shemitah recognizes is personal choice. It's not just about our own personal happiness, right? These drives and these impulses get projected outward as systems and structures that are destructive for people and are destructive for the earth, right? So actually, the beginning of the work of Shemitah and of our Teshuvah work this year during Elul begins by beginning to actually investigate what's operating here. Is it need or is it greed?
Yeah. I think that's really, it also points, Sam, to a way of bringing this practice, of course, into the rest of today and the rest of our lives in general, is by moving that question to more to the forefront of our awareness, right? And in fact, if we were more successful, to the extent that our needs are satisfied, to be able to release and let go of the craving for that represents greed, then the huge percentage, the unconscionable percentage of people on this planet whose basic needs are unmet, there would be a much greater likelihood of the ability to do that. So we want to recognize that, I think, and make that distinction. I know we just have a couple of minutes, and there are a lot of questions, comments, great ones. I'm wondering, but also some practical ones here too. So some of you have signed up for, by the way, optional practice groups that will be meeting on Thursday evenings Eastern time or Friday morning Eastern time, which will be an opportunity to some extent to respond to questions. Sam, maybe you want to put your email, if you're willing, in the chat box if people have a really pressing question or something that either really captured you or maybe troubled you, that you want to direct to Sam. Maybe you could put that in. And Barbara, if you don't mind, some people are requesting the link to the text for today, Sam's text. We can put that in again. That would be great. And again, Barbara, I don't know if you have it handy, but also if we have the link to Jonathan's framing essay for this week of practice, if we could put that in too, that would be great as well. So just a reminder, the Shofar Project doesn't mean you have to attend everything, that you have to be at the yoga, the text study, and the meditation. It means that it's totally up to you. It's all a la carte, and you can partake of the smorgasbord, if I'm not mixing metaphors there, as you like. Come and join us for meditation, for yoga, text study, and you're all, and refer to the recordings as you'd like on the YouTube channel. You can study, and hopefully with a partner also. If you have a spiritual practice partner, that's great. And if not, this might be a wonderful opportunity to find somebody to share the materials with, and have some contemplative conversation about how to bring this into your life. It's all an invitation from IJS, and we're grateful so many of you responded so powerfully. And we're going to leave it there. We're a quarter after the hour. I want to thank you, Sam, again for your beautiful presence and teaching, and perfect entree into the month. I wish you all a Chodesh Tov. Thanks, Barbara, for holding us. And we hope to see you tomorrow, both for Torah study with Jonathan at 11:30 Eastern, and or for meditation 12:30 Eastern with Cantor Care Spencer Shapiro, who will join us from Los Angeles. Great to be with you all. Wishing you a good, safe, and lots of blessings for the rest of the day. And just keep opening your hands.